Hey, you want to learn about how to make your art look wildly more interesting with light and color and emotion? Then stick around, and let's explore that together. Hey ho, Inky Arcana here, back with another video and the first time in, well, quite a while. I really wasn't sure I was going to make videos anymore at all, but then my video about lighting from last year kind of got some attention, and one of the comments on there is what motivated me to make this video. They asked for a tutorial on drawing shadows and characters in darkness, and so originally that's what this video was going to be about. But as I was starting to play around with shadows in preparation for this video, I realized that, at least the way I draw them, it's pretty much the same exact process as drawing something with an extreme light source, except that you don't add the light. Now, maybe I just don't draw characters in dark shadows a lot, and therefore I'm not the best person to give advice on this subject. So I do want to recommend a very good video by Cynic's Design on that subject. I'll have that linked in the description, and totally recommend his channel. He has a lot of really good tutorials. But as for this video, in the process it turned into more of a study on how to use lighting to convey emotion in your artwork. So I hope you'll stick with me, because after the basics of art like anatomy, shapes, and color, I think that being able to convey emotion is really the most important thing in a piece of artwork. It's really what makes the viewers connect with what you draw and see value in it. Whether you're drawing vast fantasy landscapes or a simple portrait of a person, what you are truly trying to capture and convey is an emotion, a snapshot of time, nostalgia, admiration of beauty, something that doesn't even exist, and so you create it with your own vision and the excitement of that. Love, anger, sadness. Let's be honest, just being able to draw a facial expression on a character doesn't always convey emotion as well as you would like it to, and can even end up looking a bit cliché, which is why it's really great to know how to use other things like composition and color to really be able to enhance that and push it even further than reality. Further than them. Being able to take a look at what literally exists and then bend certain aspects of reality to enhance how we see things or want to convey stuff to the world. Being an artist is truly amazing. But enough sentimental stuff for now, huh? Let's talk about art in practice. In this first part here, I'm just showing the process of how I put down my base colors and render everything out, which isn't necessarily related to this subject, but I thought it might be useful to see either way, since this is what I'm using as the base for all of the other lighting experiments in the video. Also, the first shading thing that I did at the very beginning of this video was pretty much just the most simple lighting thing that I showed in my last video, which I'll also have linked somewhere since this is basically a sequel to that. But to start out here, going back to basics, the most simple kind of shading is pretty much just manually selecting each color and changing it with the slider to be a bit darker and have a shifted hue for some interest. But that's basically exactly what I did to prepare this drawing, and it's pretty simple and self-explanatory, so I'll move on. For my first experiment conveying emotions, I thought I'd do something simple and try and make it look happy and a bit magical. So I have the light source coming from right in front of the character, and I wanted to use a lot of different hues to really make it look like it has high energy. I started out with some darkish red for the shadows and yellow for the highlights, and then I went back and also added pink around the same highlights, and I'm going to put some cyan there as well. I really like using those primary colors of cyan, yellow, and magenta, because it just looks nice in my opinion, and I think it turned out pretty alright. Using really dark colors for shadows and really light colors for the highlights, and keeping the overlay layer's opacity very high really helped to push the contrast, which I'm happy with. You can see here I'm going back and adding, even darkening up the shadows in some places more, because I wanted it to have even more contrast, as if there's some sort of magical light glowing on him. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, but I realized too late that I forgot to add eye shine to any of these, so I would go back and add some reflections. For the next one, I wanted to try and convey sadness, so naturally using a lot of blue tones, and I used a hard light layer for this one, which I can't really explain what all the different layers look like and stuff. I would definitely advise going and trying them out yourself. because there's very many different ones and they all have different looks, and it's really nice to get to know them. So anyway, for this one, I also want to point out that instead of using more saturated colors for the sort of mid-line between the shadows and the rest of the highlighted area, I actually used a desaturated grayish tone because I thought that that would give it a more dull, dreary, almost lifeless look that would really add to the mood of sadness. Blue is one of my favorite colors to work with because what is most commonly defined as blue is like such a large portion of the color wheel. It's like almost a quarter of it. And so I think it's really fun that you can play around with things that are like almost purplish to all the way to cyan, bordering on green, blue, turquoisey colors. And yeah, I just have a lot of fun with that. But anyway, about this one, I went back and sort of brushed some blue over the whole thing to add a tint to all of it because the skin was glowing a bit pink against all of the blue in his design. To finish it off, I took some really light blue and added sort of the implication of teardrops and upturned eyebrows. The next common emotion I wanted to try was anger. And I forgot to record the beginning of this, but basically I just filled the whole layer and then erased the places where I wanted the light to be hitting. I thought a dramatic side angle light would fit with conveying anger. Like maybe he's in a room filled with red light and turning to look at you while opening a door to outside or something. Ooh, spooky. I'll be honest, this one didn't really turn out very interesting in my opinion. I mean, it's pretty much just red. I do think it's pretty cool how the red mixes with the blue of his hair to make just like a purple blackish color. And I like seeing how colors play with each other and change. Because when you're just doing very simple lighting of choosing a different, maybe slightly varied hue to color in your stuff, then you don't get to see that interaction as much as you do when you use lowered opacity layers. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent. Probably because I don't have very much to say about this one. I basically just colored it in with red and then went to darken up the places where they would be in even deeper shadow. And honestly, it didn't, I don't think, like, he could be angry. He could just be in a place with really reddish light. And then, you know, it doesn't always, they're not all winners. The last emotion I was playing around with here is love. And while pink is, of course, the obvious choice, I also thought that a nice glowy backlight would lend to that mood. I feel like you could almost imagine this being in a romantic anime scene where there's flower petals flowing all around. Maybe I should have added some flower petals. Anyway, basically I added some little hearts in the eyes, and I added a second layer on top of it to really add extra glow because I wanted it to really look like the light was coming from behind, and just a real soft, fuzzy, glowy feeling to it. Something really cool about adding lighting layers is that because light really describes the form so much, I feel like his cheeks ended up looking much softer and rounder in this one compared to the others. Well, this last bit here is basically just me playing around with a few different layer types and different lighting schemes. I would absolutely encourage everyone watching to try this out yourself. Take some time to just put a clipping mask over a piece of art you already have and play around with all the different layer types that are available to you. Different colors, lighting angles, levels of saturation and brightness, and stuff like that. But since this is supposed to be something of a tutorial, allow me to give you some final thoughts to keep in mind while you're playing around. So obviously, different types of colors tend to represent different emotions. You probably already have some intuition about this too, like with blue representing sadness and red for anger. Something like dark purple could represent shock or disappointment if you frame it right. If you're ever struggling to pick a color that really fits with the mood you're trying to convey, and maybe you already have some basic lighting laid out that you like, you can go up and find the hue, saturation, color sliders and play around with the saturation slider a bit. It's pretty fun to see how the same lighting setup can look pretty different with different hues, and even play around with the saturation and brightness too while you're there. Why not? So I mostly talked about using one color for all of your shadows and just erasing away for the lighting part, but something else you can do is to use the opposite color on the color wheel for the shading as you do for the light source. or just using, for example, a cool light source and warm colors for the highlights. But since I didn't really use these in the examples from today, I'm not going to talk much about it. I'm sure that you could find some proper tutorials if you want to learn more about that concept. And the last little style or technique that I want to touch on is more used in realistic type paintings, but if your character is in an environment, try and keep in mind the color of things around them. For example, the walls, and whatever color that has would be the color of the shadows because of bounce light and stuff. And I'm sure, again, you can find proper tutorials if this is interesting or you want to look into it, but I just wanted to kind of brush on the things that I have learned and found along the way so that you know about them and can look them up and incorporate them if you want to, or leave it. And this kind of turned into more of a, here's some general ideas, now go out and try it for yourself, more than a strict tutorial, but honestly, I think that can be good sometimes. You need something that's gonna encourage you to just try things out on your own and figure out what you think looks good. I mean, that's what makes unique art, right? Well, I hope so. I would like it if somebody found this video at least a little bit helpful. And, whoa, look over there, a smooth segue. Since I hardly ever make YouTube videos, I did just want to briefly mention my other social medias where I actually post stuff, which is pretty much Instagram and TikTok, and I also have a Discord server. Those are going to be up on screen and linked in the description of the video if you want to see more of my art. I would love to keep in touch with you lovely people. And a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters, who are the loveliest people and, let's be honest, just my close friends, who I value very dearly. So the hugest thank you to Tabith, Trini Moss, Lolly B Art, Vicky Early, and Exo Pan Kid Exo. Oh yeah, also, the, almost real-time footage of the drawings in this are going to be up on my Patreon page for my supporters, so that's, a thing, yes. Okay, bye-bye. See you sometime around, I'm sure.